right, ready to dive deep. Today, we're exploring the world of esoteric regressive hypnosis.
Ooh, sounds intense.
It is, but super fascinating. We're focusing on Calogero Grifasi, um, the guy who's making waves with his own method, and a team of practitioners across different languages.
Yeah, I've seen his stuff. Pretty out there.
Right. We'll be looking at a YouTube interview he did in Sal, Cape Verde.
Hmm.
Seems you're particularly interested in how he blends hypnosis with those, esoteric practices.
Yeah, that's the part that really intrigues me. Like, where's the line between, like, psychology and spirituality?
Exactly. Okay, so let's jump right in.
So, what struck me is how Grifasi explains hypnosis. He makes it sound, well, almost simple.
I know, right? Like it's this mysterious thing, but he boils it down to that space between sleep and being awake.
Right, that hazy zone where your mind's kind of open to stuff you wouldn't normally pick up with your five senses.
It's like, what is our mind even doing in that state? It feels like a secret portal to somewhere else.
And that's where the esoteric part comes in, right? Accessing that realm beyond the physical, beyond what we can see and touch and hear and.
So you're saying, like, a physical problem could stem from something in this esoteric realm?
Well, that's Grifasi's take. He's very clear he's not a doctor. But through this, like, esoteric lens, he sees physical and psychological issues as clues to something deeper going on.
Whoa, okay. So how does he even pinpoint this? Like, root cause? Is it all based on what the person says during hypnosis?
It's about what comes up during the regression. He uses whatever problem they're dealing with, whether it's like anxiety or a recurring illness or even relationship troubles, and uses that as a starting point. He tastes them back through time.
Wait, so he's actually using hypnosis to guide them into their past?
Yeah, like way back, to the womb, even preconception, past lives. He thinks revisiting those key moments, it can uncover, like, hidden trauma or limiting beliefs, maybe even energetic attachments that are still messing with them today.
Wow, that's a serious deep dive. You mentioned earlier he developed his own method, though. What makes his approach so unique?
Oh, one big thing is the induction techniques. He actually moved away from those long, suggestive inductions.
You mean like this stereotypical swinging watch?
Yeah, kind of like that. He found they could be too much, almost dangerous for some people. Even told a story about this client who channeled, get this, a powerful entity during one of those long inductions.
Okay, that's definitely too much. I see why he switched things up. So what does he do instead?
Short, neutral inductions.
Yeah.
He thinks they minimize, like, outside influence, a cleaner connection to the person's subconscious.
So like tuning a radio to a specific frequency without all the static.
Exactly. But what you might be wondering is, what about people who aren't easily hypnotized? Can they still do this?
Yeah, that was my next question.
Totally. That's
Yep.
where the support operator comes in.
It's a chord operator.
It's another person who's hypnotized and acts like a kind of like a go-between, helping those who aren't as susceptible, to access the information.
So it's like having a guide in that deeper state.
Exactly. And get this, even the person who isn't hypnotized, just by listening to the session, they can start entering that state themselves.
Wow, seriously?
Yeah, like their mind's being gently guided into that receptive space. It's wild.
It is, but I gotta admit, I'm still a little hazy on this whole other world thing, the etheric world he keeps mentioning.
Yeah.
It seems pretty central to his whole approach.
Right, it's key. Grifasi sees it as a realm where the rules of physics, like gravity and time, they just don't apply in the same way. It's where thoughts and beliefs actually have power to shape reality.
So like the internet, but for your soul. And you need good antivirus software. No, but seriously, how does he explain it in a way that, actually makes sense?
Think of a video game. You create houses, you fight monsters, all through code. He thinks the etheric world is similar, a place where our thoughts and beliefs become like code, shaping our experiences.
Okay, I can kind of see that. So in this world, our thoughts aren't just abstract things. They actually have power.
Exactly. He believes we're all co-creators in this reality. But there's a catch. It's not all sunshine and roses. Remember those viruses we talked about?
Oh yeah, now it's getting interesting. Tell me more about those. What are they and what do they do?
Well, that's where things get a little dark. Back again for more on esoteric regressive hypnosis.
We're going deeper into the world of Calogero Grifasi.
Right, picking up where we left off. We talked about his method, that whole etheric world concept.
Yeah, and those viruses you mentioned. That's where it started to feel like, I don't know, a sci-fi thriller or something.
Kind of does, right. So about those viruses, Grifasi gets into the nitty-gritty of what forms they can take.
He mentioned some pretty freaky stuff, like humanoids, reptilians.
Even insectoids, it's wild.
It's like a whole cosmic zoo of entities. But what's weird is he thinks there's a connection to Earth, like to actual life forms here.
Yeah, so it's not just random spirits floating around. He suggests there might be some evolutionary link, though he's careful he doesn't say for sure, just that it's, worth thinking about.
So these entities hanging out in the etheric world, what do they actually do to people?
Well, we touched on it before. He thinks most people just get these subtle interferences, headaches, feeling tired, trouble focusing.
But he also said there could be, like, serious stuff. Possession, even.
Yeah, mental control, things like that. That's when it gets really scary. Headaches are one thing, but losing control of your own mind?
That's a whole other level. So how does that even happen? Does an entity just, like, take over?
It's not that simple. Grifasi says they look for weaknesses, like emotional trauma, weak boundaries, even personality traits that make you, more vulnerable.
So some people are just targets.
Kinda, yeah. And that's where his whole regressive method comes in. By revisiting those past experiences, people can figure out what those vulnerabilities are and maybe start to deal with them.
So it's not just about getting rid of the entity, it's about figuring out why it was attracted in the first place.
Exactly. It's about taking back control, strengthening yourself.
So say someone's listening and thinks, maybe IVE got an entity problem. What should they be looking out for?
Grifasi says the signs can be all over the place, from physical stuff to mental and emotional stuff.
I remember you said memory problems, mood swings, even relationship troubles could be signs.
Yeah, it's anything that feels, off. But specifically sleep problems, bad dreams, sudden changes in behavior.
That's tough because couldn't you just chalk that up to stress or something?
Exactly. That's what makes it tricky. Grifasi's big on paying attention to those subtle signs. And if something feels wrong, getting help.
But who do you even go to for this? Most therapists aren't exactly trained in, entity removal, right?
Right, and that's where Grifasi's work comes in. He and the people he's trained offer a different approach for people who are, open to exploring those possibilities.
Okay, so we've got these entities, and they can mess with us in all sorts of ways. But he also talked about metaphorizing. What was that about?
That's where it gets a bit more complex. See, Grifasi knows that how we experience these encounters, it's subjective, it's personal.
So, one person sees a reptilian, another just sees a shadow.
Exactly. He thinks it's filtered through our own beliefs, fears, or background.
So it might not literally be a reptile, it's just how they're seeing it.
Right, and the therapy is about figuring out what that metaphor means for them.
Sounds like a lot of trust involved, and being willing to face the unknown.
Definitely. Which brings up the whole, controversy around this stuff.
Right, why is it so controversial? It's not like hypnosis is new.
True, but this esoteric angle, it rubs some people the wrong way. For one, it challenges how science and medicine see things. The whole idea of a reality beyond what we can measure, it makes people uncomfortable.
It goes against, everything we've been taught.
Yeah. Plus, there's the potential for abuse, right? People using these concepts to exploit others, take advantage.
So finding an ethical practitioner is key.
Absolutely. Which is why Grifasi's focus on building a trustworthy team is so important. It's got to be done with integrity, respect for the person.
He seems very aware of the potential for harm.
He is. Okay, so we've talked about the risks, the controversy. But why would anyone even want to go down this path?
Good point. There's got to be some upside.
Think of it this way. If your problems could come from, beyond this lifetime, wouldn't you at least want to explore that?
I see what you mean. It ties into the whole past lives thing, how they might be affecting us now.
Exactly. Esoteric regressive hypnosis offers a whole new perspective on healing and growth. It suggests our problems aren't just limited to this life, or even our physical bodies.
It's like a spiritual detective story, finding hidden clues that explain why things are the way they are.
And that's what makes this so fascinating. It makes us question everything, consider perspectives that are, outside the box.
We've covered a lot. The dangers, the controversy, what's good about it. But there's one huge EE thing we haven't really tackled.
Oh, yeah, the big one. Proof. Is there any?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
How do we know any of this is real?
And that's what we'll get into next time, in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, final part of our deep dive into this whole esoteric regressive hypnosis thing. With Calogero Grifasi, right? We've gone through his methods, talked about that etheric world, even met some interesting entities along the way.
We have a lot of mind-bending stuff.
It is. But now I think we got to address the elephant in the room, right? The proof. How do we know any of this is legit?
It's the question, yeah. Especially with something this, unconventional, easy to get caught up in the stories, but gotta stay grounded.
Right, can't just take it all at face value. So how do we even evaluate the evidence, if there is any, when we're talking about, like, esoteric experiences?
Grifasi admits it's tricky to give hard proof. He says the etheric world, by its very nature, it's outside what science can normally measure.
Makes sense. You can't just hook someone up to an EEG and see their past lives. But does that mean it all boils down to, like, personal stories, just what people say happened?
Not necessarily. We might not have the tools to measure it directly, not yet anyway, but there are still ways to look at it critically.
Okay, so what can we do? How do we approach this, like, logically?
One thing is look for patterns. If lots of people, totally separate from each other, describe similar things, same entities, same transformations during regression, it hints that maybe it's not just their imagination.
So, like, common threads running through different people's experiences? Makes sense. What else?
Look at the effects. Not just the stories, but actual changes. Brain activity, hormones, even physical stuff. If someone goes through this and there are measurable differences, that's something.
So, like, data that backs up the subjective stuff.
Exactly. The problem is this whole area of research, it's so new and it doesn't fit the usual science mold. Hard to get funding to study entities in past lives.
Yeah, most research is about stuff you can, like, hold in your hand. But are there NNY scientists trying to, bridge that gap between science and the spiritual stuff?
There are definitely some pushing the boundaries, trying new ways to measure things, coming up with new methods to study it all.
So even if we don't have all the answers, at least there's some effort to, like, legitimize it, make it more scientific.
Exactly. It might take a while to figure it all out, but even the journey is pretty amazing. We're exploring consciousness, the nature of reality itself.
It's like charting a new world, right? One that could change how we see ourselves, everything.
That's what makes this so compelling. It forces us to question, to consider possibilities that, we might not have even thought of before.
So where does this leave us? What should our listeners keep in mind as they, keep exploring this?
I think the key is balance. Be open-minded, but also be critical. Don't just dismiss it, but don't just believe everything either. Do your own research, think for yourself, and trust your gut.
That's good advice for anything, really, not just this stuff.
It is. It's about that sweet spot. Curiosity, AD, a healthy dose of skepticism.
Well, this has been quite the ride.
Yeah.
Esoteric regressive hypnosis. Who knew? We've learned about Grifasi's way of doing things, that mind-blowing etheric world, the whole thing about entities, and even, the search for proof.
Hopefully it's giving you some things to think about, maybe sparked some new questions, even inspired you to dig deeper into it all.
There's tons of resources out there if you're interested. Books, articles, you name it. Even online groups where you can chat with others who are, into this stuff.
The exploration never really ends. There's always more to learn, more to discover.
So keep that curiosity alive. Stay open to whatever's out there. And until next time, happy diving, everyone.